All right, the shiur is presented by Yoshua for the Hatzlacha of Fegel Sarah Bat Rivka Rosa and to the Hatzlacha of Rachel Chaya Bat Sarah and for the Refuah Shlema for all the people who need that, whatever they are. This shiur is on the issue of Mezonot Bread, if there is such thing, and Yoshua will take it away from here. Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Rav. So again, I'd like to first thank the Rav for the opportunity to present this shiur. And the reason that we're doing it is based on a discussion we've had last week regarding whether there is such a concept of Mezonot Bread or not. There's much discussion to be said, both for those who are in favor of such an idea and those who are against. Just to make sure, is it visible? Is my PowerPoint slides visible?
So far visible, yes.
Okay, so for the audience who will be listening to this on YouTube, you should know that with other shiurim as well, these slides are going to be presented and embedded into the video on YouTube. So all you have to do is look under the link and it's going to be shown. Okay, so the title of the shiur is Mezonot, a review on the decades-old debate. And again, we're going to see that it actually is a debate whether there is such a concept of Mezonot Bread, because there really are two sides to the issue, and it's not so clear-cut as meets the eye. So to present everything, we always start off with the Gemara itself. There's a Gemara in the second Brachot in Perek Shishi, Daf Mem Bet Amud Aleph. The Gemara presents with a story, and it goes, if you can see on the blue arrow, it says, Rav Yehuda hava asik le'lebrei be Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva. So it talks of a story of Rav Yehuda who was taking care of his son's wedding in the house of Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva. I took Lekamayu Pata Babi Kisnin, and they brought in front of him Pata Babi Kisnin. I'm going to see what exactly that means, but they brought some sort of a bread, which is known as Pata Babi Kisnin, Ki ata shamainhu dekam evreche hamotzi. And he heard that the people there, they were saying the bracha of hamotzi. Amar lahu, my tzitzi, dekashamana. So he asked the question, what is this tzitzi that I'm hearing you? Why are you saying hamotzi? What am I hearing exactly? Dilma hamotzi lachem in aras kam evarchaitayu. He says, are you saying the bracha of hamotzi? Amar lei in. Then they told him back, yes, of course. The Tanya Rabbi Munam Amar Mushum Rabbi Yehuda. We find the bright that says in the name of Rabbi Munam, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, Pata Babi Kisnein. If you have bread, which is known as Pata Babi Kisnein, Meverchin Alei Hamotzi. So the bracha for such a thing is Hamotzi. Amar Shmuel, and Shmuel says Halacha Rabbi Munam. And Shmuel says the halacha follows the opinion of Rabbi Munam. So therefore, the fact that we're saying the bracha of Hamotzi for Pata Babi Kisnein is absolutely appropriate, because that's what the halacha paskin's like. Amar lahu, so Rabbi Yehuda says back to them, Ein halacha Rabbi Munam. The halacha does not follow the opinion of Rabbi Munam. And he says, Itmar Amri Lei, Vaha Mar Huda Mar Mishmed Shmuel, Lachmaniot Marvim Bahen, Umevachin Alei Hamotzi. But they say back to him, but we found in the name of Shmuel himself, which says regarding Lachmaniot, which is a type of Pata Babi Kisnein, the bracha for them is Hamotzi. So he says, Shani Hatam. He says, no, over there it is different. Why is it different over there? He says, because over there, the Seudah was actually based on the bracha of Hamotzi itself. So again, in the situation where Pata Babi Kisnein is going to be the course of this main Seudah, a person is establishing their main meal on top of that, only then and there will the bracha be Hamotzi. But without that situation taking place, it would have another bracha, and that bracha would be Mezonot. So now the question becomes, of course, what exactly is the nature of Pata Babi Kisnein? And based on this is actually what seems to be a three-way machloket. We'll see whether this is a machloket or not, but three different possibilities of what that definition is possible of taking place. So the first one is based on the shitat of the Aruch, and if you see where the blue arrow is and the letters Chaf Samach Nun, the second word over there, it talks about, the Aruch is a semi-dictionary, as it were. It's like an anthology of all the different words that happen and take place throughout Tanakh and Shas and all the Mamrei Chazal. He goes through all the words and he gives different understandings of what they could be referring to. So he says, he says in the Gemara, in the 6th parak of Brachot, it says that they were brought in front of him, Pata Babi Kisnein. So that's a reference to our Gemara in Brachot. Pirish Rav Hai Gaon. The Rav Hai Gaon explains. He says that hem ke'avi vehem pat ben metuvalim ben shen metuvalim. He says this is a type of bread as well, that it could have different types of spices, or maybe they're also absent of spices at the same time. He says the reason they call it pata babikisnin is because they're dry.
Ke'achin.
He says because they are dried and they are something that people bite into. Whether a person's found in some sort of celebration or even he could have it in the comfort of his own home.
Like, for example, pretzels or anything like that, or hard biscuits.
Hard biscuits, pretzels, crackers, things of the nature. He says the nature of these types of foods is for people to eat them very little. They usually not kovei suda on such a thing. And he brings another story of Rav Huna, who also ate such a thing. You can skip a few lines. The first word of the line is Mimena, and it says in the center, Rabbeinu Chananel. It says, Rabbeinu Chananel perish, Zu hapata siya kimin kisnim miluim sukar shkedim begozin. And he says that Rabbeinu Chananel had a different understanding, that when it says pata bar kisnin, it's actually a reference to the word kis, which means a pocket, and they can be filled with sugar or almonds or walnuts or things of the sort. And basically the idea is that any time the person has a bread which was baked with a pocket inside of it, filled with anything else inside to use as a sweetener, that would be considered pata babikisnin. So based on the Ruch, he brings seemingly a machloka between Rav Hai Gaon, which says that anything that has a more harder texture in which a person bites into them, like the crackers or the pretzels, and the shita of Rabbeinu Chananel, who holds that is not the case, but rather it's referring to something that has a pocket which has a filling inside of it. Those are the first two shitot. Going to the shita of the Rambam writes in Halachot Brachot, Perek Gimel Halakha Tet. We're moving a little bit from the beginning of the halacha, and where the error is, and it says, he says, if you have a dough that is kneaded with honey, or with oil, or bechalav, or with milk, or if it was mixed with certain spices, and then it was baked. He says, this is what is known as pata babikisnin. Even though it is considered bread, meaning regarding the laws of challah, it is considered bread. A person would have to separate challah for such a thing. Nonetheless, they have the status of berei minei mezonot. A person is going to have to say the bracha over there. But the Rambam continues and says, in the situation where a person is not going to be kovei, it is kovei suda on them, he has a large enough amount of them on which he establishes his meal, then and there would a person have to say the bracha of hamotzei and wash before and then say bracha mazon afterwards as well. So essentially, again, we have three different discussions. What exactly is the nature of pata babikisnin? According to Rav Hai Gaon, we said it's anything which a person bites into. It has a crunchy texture. According to the Rabbeinu Chananel, it's a reference to something that has a filling. According to the Rambam holds that it is something that was kneaded with different types of liquids, clearly not water. He gives examples of honey, oil, milk, or anything that is mixed with spices only afterwards is baked in. That is a discussion of pata babikisnin. The question is, of course, how do we paskin like? And this goes into the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch in Siman Kos Samachet, Siv Zayin says the following. It says, pata babikisnin. Regarding pata babikisnin, yesh mefarshim pa shesu kimin kisim shemuna otam dvashu sukar. He says, the first explanation is based on the opinion of Rabbeinu Chananel that we saw. There are those who say that it has a type of pocket which is filled with honey or sugar, the gozim shkedim, or types of walnuts and almonds, v'tavlin, or spices, vehem nikrim. I don't know exactly how to pronounce this. Is rishkolosh,
Kolash or riochosh, roskas. Really, it should be like rosca. Roscas are in Spanish are sweet baked goods.
Sweet baked goods. Okay. He says there are those who say that this is a reference to anything that is mixed at the time of kneading with oil or honey or spices, and then only afterwards it is baked. Clearly, that's the shita of the Rambam. He says, and this is that the tam of the tarovet, basically that the taste within the mixture is going to be noticeable.
Now, that's a very important point. This point, I just want to emphasize on that. What it says, in other words, the mixture of spices that you put inside, or the juice that you put inside, and maybe later on Yoshua would explain regarding types of juice, it needs to be noticeable by Isa. In the dough, it needs to be noticeable. not as a coating on top, in the dough itself. And that's very important to understand.
Yeah, so the opinion of Moran is basically that as long as there's a certain degree of taste that's noticeable sufficiently enough, the person would be able to tell that it was kneaded with something else besides water. He gives the definition of mei pirot, but again, clearly based on his earlier definition that it could have any other types of mixture as well, as long as it's nikar b'yisa, it's noticeable within the dough. That is the definition of pataba b'kisnin, and that would require a mezonot. The Rambam says something interesting. He says, "V'yesharim shezen nikra pat gamur." He says there are those who say that this is considered still 100% bread, and there's no distinction between whether it was mixed with juices or whether it's mixed with water, but it still has the bracha of hamotzi. Ela im ken yesh vahem harbe tavlin o dvash kimnei metika. He says, unless that it would be in a situation in which it has plentiful, a large amount of spices or honey or any of the types of liquids, which would make it much more noticeably sweet. And he says basically that is the minhag, is that to assume that only when there is a large amount of different types of spices or anything else that would be mixed inside. So according to the Ramah, it's not necessary alone just for it to have a noticeable taste, but it has to be super sweet. It has to be so much that's going to be as sweet as a cake were. And then the Shulchan Aruch goes and continues and says, "V'yesh mefarshim shupat ben metuvel ben she'en metuvel." He says there are those who say that it's a type of bread in which whether it could be filled with spices, not filled with spices, she'osim otam ka'achim yivashim v'kosmin. And basically, this is the shita of the Rav Hai Gaon, which holds that as long as a person is able to bite into them, that would fulfill the definition of patah b'kisin. And l'shitato, he holds that all three of them is...
He calls it bishkonish, which is really biscochos, and which is basically dry biscuits, like any of those things that are kind of, the Yerushalmi things that you go in Yerushalayim and you eat them a little dry. That's what it is. Even if it doesn't have tavlin inside, it's still crunchy. So that's why it's called kisnin mishum koses.
And he summarizes saying, the halacha follows the opinion of all three of them. He says regarding all three of these things, we assume that all of them have the status of patah b'kisnin, and therefore the appropriate bracha for all of them would be, not unless you come in a situation where a person would be kovei su'udah on them, and that's a whole different discussion what exactly kovei su'udah is. Now, going back to the second discussion that Moran has, he says again that as long as the taste of whatever is being mixed inside of it, whether it's going to be fruit juices or sugar or milk or whatever else is being needed inside besides the water, as long as there's a sufficient noticeable taste inside that makes it clear that there is something else besides water and you could taste the sweetness, that is sufficient. But according to the Ramah, it can't just be noticeable, but it has to have a larger proportion than perhaps the water. We're going to see exactly what is the proportion necessary for one to assume that this is the bracha of mezonot. So now the Mishnah Berurah comments on this idea, and he says in Seif Katan Lam Gimel, Tavlim ura behen ad she'al yedei zeh yeh hanikar hatavlim betam yoter ma'akemach. He says that the amount of tavlim that's necessary for it to be mixed inside of them is that it has to be so much until the point in which the spice or the liquid that's being kneaded inside of the dough becomes more recognizable than the taste of the actual dough itself. He says that the key understanding is that when you have whatever is being kneaded inside, if it is the majority, again, the key word over here is that if it is the majority, is anything besides the water, but the water represents the minority, only then is it going to be considered bar mimei mezonot. So according to the shita of the Mishnah Berurah, based on the psak of the Ramah, if you have 49% milk or any sweetener that's being kneaded inside with the dough, and 51% water, that still has the deen of regular bread, and a person would have to wash his hands and say the bracha of hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Only when you reach the critical number, 51%, when it's a rov, a majority, only then would a person be able to say the bracha of borei mimei mezonot, and then be able to only wash his hands if he's kovei su'udah on that.
However, don't forget that rov, but we still have to have the tam nikar. The flavor has to be noticeable.
Yes, and the Mishnah Berurah continues with this idea. It says, Gashman hatam. And he says, when you have the majority being filled with anything besides the water, then and there you're going to find Gashman hatam. You're going to find that the tam is going to be sufficiently noticeable. It's going to be extremely sweet, and it has far more than the sweetness that is necessary for the shita of Maran. He says, "Hatam harbe mod al ashi al dezehem behaikar." He says, because that tam is going to make it what is the principal part of the food. That's the ikar. V'tam ha'isat tafel, and the whatever taste is being provided based on the dough, that's going to be secondary. Okay, that is the shita of the Mishnah Berurah. So again, he says that as long as there is the majority being filled with anything besides water, and through that, the tam is going to be noticeably felt to a great sweetening. So there's an interesting question that I just wanted to bring, that the Mishnah Berurah brings down in the second arrow, if you find on the bottom right, where it says Valacha Kidvrei Kulam, where Maran says the halacha follows all three of them. So he asks an interesting question based on the Chidushei Rabbi Akiva Eger, where he says, I am Chidushei Rabbi Akiva Eger Sheikh She, and he asks an interesting question. Amai lo katam machaber diyesh diyesh shemam yitzei yidei kulam. He has a question. Why is it that Maran, whenever he paskins, he doesn't say that Yeresh Shamayim, that someone who's God-fearing should assume that all of them are all of them have the din of Mezonot, and therefore a person should, say all of them just for as a chashash. But rather he assumes that actually all of them themselves have the din of it. So he says that the answer is based on the following. He says, he says, based on the Achron, Mamar Mordechai, he says, Meyashvo, and he brings an interesting way of bringing the shita together. The Gavan Dalon Iskar Behedya Shechokim HaPoskim, he says, because since it's not exactly clear whether the poskim are actually disagreeing with one another, it's possible that they actually agree. So therefore, in reality, there's actually not a machloket between Rav Hai Gaon. There's not a machloket between him and the Rambam and Rabbeinu Hananel. But actually, all of them seem to be saying that as long as a person is eating something in which it's clear that a person is not being kovei suda on them, and this lack of kviyut suda could have a number of ways in which it reflects. It could have a way in which it's not going to be it's going to be reflected in the fact that it's very crunchy, or it's going to be reflected in the fact in which it's being kneaded with things besides water, or perhaps even to the point in which it's going to be filled with things inside of it, whether it's going to be sugar or different types of spices as well. So he sees that the idea of pataba b'kisnein is not just on the word what kisnein means, but the fact is that as long as it's eaten as a dessert and not part of a meal, that in itself is sufficient to make it something that's a mezonot worthy. So that's how he's matar. It's exactly what it is. So it's not really based on definition, but based on what exactly a person would seem to be kovei suda on that at a given time. And that's how he understands what the reason that Maran brings all these three ideas together without differentiating whether there's machloket or not. So now, that is the shita of the Mishnah Berurah. But there's an interesting shita that's brought down by the Admor Zaken, the Baal HaTanya, in his Shulchan Aruch Harav, in Siman Kuv Samachet Seif Katan Yud Aleph. And he goes on an interesting discussion, what exactly is the distinction of Pat Babakisnein or a regular pot, based on the shita of the Rambam. And he says, V'yesh mefarshim shepat babakisnein hi pashin lusha bidvash. He said, there are those who say, and this is, again, the shita of the Rambam, who holds that pat babakisnein is when you have bread that is kneaded with honey, or b'chalav, or with milk, v'chema, or with butter, or b'shuman, or b'shemen, or if it's going to be with different types of oils, or b'mei, or if it's going to be done with egg whites, or b'mei perot, or with fruit juices, v'yayin, or wine, or b'sham mashkin, chutz mimayim, or any other type of drink besides water. Va'afil irav ba me'at mayim. He says, even if it was mixed only with a little water, im harov hu mishar mashkin, if the majority of it comes from other types of liquids, v'vrachin alav b'rei minei mezonot, v'bracha achad mein gimel. He says that a person would say the bracha rishona b'rei minei mezonot, and for the bracha achrona he would say al hamichya. That is his shita. So now what becomes very interesting is there are those who actually want to suggest that there is a machloket between the Shulchan Aruch Harav and the Mishnah Berurah that we just saw previously. According to the Mishnah Berurah, he says that when there's a majority and that produces a noticeable taste, that's going to bring about the change from regular bread to Borei Minei Mezonot. Now, according to the Baal HaTanya, the only condition that he places over here, he says, Im harovu mishar mashkin, if the majority of it has any other type of liquids. And there is no mention over here that it has to have a noticeable taste. So now the question is, why was that omitted? Is there actually a machloket? And there's really two ways to look about this. You can say, in reality, there is no machloket, because if we look at what the Mishnah Berurah said earlier, he didn't say that there's two conditions, that it has to have a rov of other types of liquids, and it also has to have, as second condition, a tam nirgash, that has to have a sufficient amount of taste. But rather, he says she'al yedei zeh nirgash min hatam, that the only condition that's necessary is that, in fact, all it has to have is a majority of any other type of liquid, and as a consequence of that, al yedei zeh means that is a consequence, not a second condition. A person is going to be able to taste, to a great extent, whatever type of liquid is being dealt over here. So if that's the case, if the only thing that we're concerned about is the natural consequence, there's absolutely no necessity for the Baal HaTanya, the Shulchan Aruch Harav, to actually state that as well, because it's not a condition, but rather something that's going to happen in any event. However, there are those who say, no, that's actually not the way it's supposed to be read. And in fact, the Mishnah Berurah requires there to be two different conditions. Condition number one, that it has to have a majority of any other type of liquid besides the water. And condition number two, that it has to be tam nirgash ma'od, that the taste that's going to be noticeable is going to be greatly noticed. But in the situation in which it's not greatly noticed, it's going to still have the status of bread. Again, saying that emphatically. If in the situation in which it's not greatly noticed, it's going to have the status of bread. According to that, when we look at the shita of the Baal HaTanya, he says that the only thing that's necessary, im rov hu mishar mashkin, that if the majority comes from any other type of liquid, that would be considered Borei Minei Mezonot. Meaning that even if you have a majority of any other type of liquid, he doesn't bring the condition. Again, he does not bring the condition of the necessity for taste. So even if you have something, apparently, according to this understanding, that has 51%, 60%, 70% of any other type of liquid, if that's the rov, that is considered Borei Minei Mezonot, according to that understanding of it. The question, again, lies on why did the Baal HaTanya not place that inside of the words. You can learn in two different ways. Either it was dafka or lav dafka. And based on that understanding, that's where exactly the whole story of the Mezonot rolls and Mezonot bread come from. So we're going to see a little more into this shortly afterwards. So the question is, how exactly does Sfardim paskin? So Sfardim paskin like the shita of Maran, who hold that as long as you have a noticeable taste, that's going to be sufficient for a person to say Borei Minei Mezonot. And this comes in a number of Sfarim. The only one I was able to bring because of a lack of a scanner was the shita of Harav ben Sion Bashul. He writes in Chelik Bet, Sif Yud Bet, the following question.
That's what you have.
I'm sorry?
That's what you have.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that there's other shitot as well.
Oh, okay.
Others. I didn't bring all of them. I only have it over here, the single one. But the only one I was able to get down was this one. He says, She'ela, ma mevrachim al chala metukal l'chmeyot metukal. So the question is, when you have a situation where you have very sweet challah or egg challah, in which the taste is obviously very sweet or it's very eggy, what exactly?
Not necessarily. I'm sorry to interrupt. It's not necessarily very sweet or very eggy. Pay attention to his words. Kol shemargish ta'am metikut b'chala. As far as if you taste even sweetness, because regular bread is not sweet. If you feel ta'am metikut, in other words, it's sweet in the challah or in the roll, you have to make mezonot. And now v'tzarich sheyargish et metikut. In other words, you can tell this is sweet. So it's even a little less than a cake. It's just very sweet. Now, but that's with the dough, not from coating on top.
Yeah, so that was my miswording over there. Again, what I was just trying to say was many times that the fact is that it's actually very, very sweet, and still Ashkenazim would not say the bracha on that. But that was just my miswording. So what exactly is the bracha in which you have sweet challah or sweet rolls? Lachmayot meaning rolls. Teshuvah. So now the teshuvah is as follows: as long as there is a sufficient noticeable taste that is found within the sweet challah or within the roll, the Bnei Sfarad, should say the bracha b'rei minei mezonot, unlike the Ashkenazim, which would, again, based on the Shita of the Ramah and the Mishnah Berurah, and also from the Admar Zaken, that as long as there's less than 50% or 51% of it is not, or less than 51% is not from the other types of liquids, and 51% is water itself, even though there's the tam nergash, they would hold that it's still the bracha of Hamos Lechem Min Haaretz, but he's saying that Bnei Sfarad would actually say the bracha of B'rei Minei Mezonot. And the person has to taste the sweetness. It can't be that person tastes something different. He has to taste the actual sweetness. He can't put it in his mouth and say, this tastes interesting. I'm not exactly sure what it is. But if he tastes the sweetness, that's when it becomes sufficient noticeable. That's when a person would say the bracha of B'rei Minei Mezonot. And of course, this is the Shita of Rav Ovadia and his sons, Rav David Yosef, Rav Tzipcha Yitzhak Yosef, and many others as well, based on the Shita of Maran. So, based on that, we're going to see exactly what is the status of the Mezonot rolls. So now, what I have in front of you is the first publication. Well, the OU. Let me just tell you this: the OU, they have, I think, I think it's a quarterly, like a journal that's called Mesorah, that's been published since I believe the late 80s, from 1989, I believe. In the very first edition, the actual first discussion that was brought over there was, what is the status of Mezonot rolls? So that being the case, it's clearly a decades-old discussion. This is from at least from the 80s and perhaps even before that. I'm not exactly quite sure when exactly the first time this happened, but Halav, does the Rav know approximately when the first discussion of this came about?
Well, I guess during Maran.
They're Maran, okay.
I mean, I don't know. It's like when people start to cook, I guess. I really have no idea.
So, at the very least, we could talk about from the 80s and perhaps beforehand, but this became sufficiently noticeable for a large discussion to come about. I mean, if this is the very first topic that the OU ever discusses in any halakhic journal, this must have been there for a long time, but that's just my conjecture. So, the author of this responsum is Harav Balsky, Alav Shalom, and he goes through many sources to attack this idea that there's even a concept of Mezonot rolls. He assumes that the very idea is an oxymoron, that there's no such thing, because the idea that a person would have a roll, which is generally eaten as a seudah, and then make a Mezonot on that contradicts one another. And he brings one shita that seems to be the standard approach about those who actually assume that there's such a thing, and he goes against it. So where the bottom arrow is, it says, he says there are those who bring a single source to their words, holding that there is such a concept of Mezonot bread. Sefer Dat Torah. Again, this is the Sefer of Dat Torah, La Gaon, Mibrazan Zatzal, B'siman Kuf Samachet, B'dim Matchil V'yesh Omrim. Shezeni Nikav B'zel Shel No. Sham. Mashkelav Shulchan Aruch Dehu Sheyeh Tam Tarovet Hamei Perot, or Tavlin Nikar Be'isan Yarali Dehainu Im Harov Mayim. Ava Barov Mei Perot, and so Sheyurgash Be'isan Tam Hamei Perot. Akan L'Sheno. So according to the Dat Torah, what he holds is that as long as there's a majority of the fruit juices, even though there is no taste that's noticeable or no taste at all that's given, that is sufficient for one to assume that this is the bracha b'rei minei mezonot. And if we think about it, we could question ourselves, is this really a da'at yachid? I mean, if we look at the earlier shita of the Baal HaTanya, the Admor again that we spoke about earlier, let me just bring that back again. So it says, where is it? As long as the majority of it comes from Sham Mashkin, we would say the bracha b'rei minei mezonot. It's very possible, and this is what I'm assuming. Again, I haven't seen this anywhere, but I'm assuming that the real makor to this Dat Torah is based on the Admor Zaken, because that seems to be where it's going. As long as that it's the rov, but even though it's not being tasted, that's sufficient for a person to say the bracha of Borei Minei Mezonot. And that's essentially what's going on with the Mezonot rolls. That we're going to see that the primary ingredient inside of it comes from concentrated apple juice. And the idea that's coming on over here, that's used as the main support, is that since that's the majority of it, even though the taste of the concentrated apple juice is not going to provide a sufficient amount of taste to make it noticeable, that is sufficient because of the opinion of the Dat Torah, which apparently could be understood based on the opinion of the Admor HaZaken as well.
However, you need to notice that when they are talking about, based on the Mishnah Berurah in Lamed Gimel over there, you have to pay attention that when we talk about Rov Mei Perot, in other words, fruit juice, when there's a majority, what they're talking about is 100% fruit juice. In other words, let's say like orange juice, that it's 100% and so on and so forth, without the addition of water, because the water is not mitztaref to the overall configuration of 50% and so on and so forth. Now, as I posted over there before, it's on Sefer Zot HaBracha brings it, and that's the according to Ashkenazim, a challah that is made with apple juice might be hamotzi, but Sfaradim for sure is going to be mezonot if the flavor of the ta'arovet nikar ba'isa. That's why we need it to be flavorful. It's not just that it's a little bit, because remember what we read about when Maran said that if it's just a little bit, it stays hamotzi, and that's what brings the Kaf HaChaim. Chazon Ovadia brings that, or Etzion, and so on and so forth. So that's what we need to pay attention. That's why Sfaradim have they try to use for Shabbat. They try to use water challah, not any other challah.
Okay, thank you, Rav. So, as the Rav was saying, that we're going to see as well what exactly is the nature of the that's being used, whether it has a status of water, whether it has a status of the regular juice itself, and that is part of the discussion that Harav Belsky brings down as well. I believe that's actually on the next page. So again, the main shita that's being brought down is the opinion of the Dat Torah, who holds that as long as there's a majority of anything besides water, even though you have the situation where it's not being nirgash hatam, where the tam is not being felt, that is sufficient for a person to say the bracha Borei Minei Mezonot. Again, is this really a dat yachid? It could be argued either way. You can, if we assume that when the Baal HaTanya in his Shulchan Aruch HaRav spoke, really dafka, that only has to be rov, it doesn't seem to be a dat yachid. It could be based on that. But it's lav dafka, and it's really just a way of saying that it's really tam nirgash, as the opinion of the Mishnah Berurah, then we would say, yes, this is a dat yachid, and that was never the real intention. But it can be argued, it can really be argued either way. Continuing with this, so we find, continuing with this, the question, whether the concentrated apple juice actually has the status of water, or whether it has the status of regular juice. So he brings the shita of the Sefer Minchat Yitzchak in Chelek Tet Siman Zayin. He says, "Hevi divrei Yeshua me'ir Johannesburg b'Darom, South Africa. V'zel sheno hine be'Torah hadin na'agu hanachtomim le'la'afod lahem mezonot b'tzura zo mechnisim kemot mayim k'negdam mei perot b'shaveh." So he says that there's a minhag in some of the bakers inside of Johannesburg in South Africa, in which what they do is they have apparently an equal measure of fruit juices and also water mixed with one another during the time of kneading. And through the addition and mixture of eggs and sugar and
oil,
you're going to find that the water becomes a minority. He says, even though you find that through the mixture you don't really taste the mei perot that's really sufficient to be noticeable within the dough, he says that they still find this some somech to be able to say that this is going to be the bracha of Borei Minei Mezonot. It's a kamash katav marshan bedat Torah, as we find in the Sefer Dat Torah that we saw earlier above. He said, he says, afterwards we figured out that in reality what's going on is that the juices that are being used, basically what goes on is that they use it through concentrate before they actually place it back inside of the inside
Bottles.
bottles, mosifim mayim ad shemegia lekamot sheya kodem harichus. They reconstituted with water to the point in which it's going to be filled with the original amount of water that was done before it was concentrated. And he says, and based on the laws of the government, 100% meperot, that it's able to be 100% fruit juices based on the government standards, and that could be advertised as such. He says, question is whether it has a status of actual natural juice, or maybe it's really considered only 20% juice and 8% water. And of course, if it's 8% water, it's rov mayim, and it should have the din of mayim. And he says, "V'godon heshisha din 8% mayim yesh lahem lo din meperot." And he says over there that if it has 8% water, it does not have the din of regular juices. So based on the din of the Minchat Yitzchak, what's being brought down over here is that Rav Belsky Alav Shalom wants to say that since the juices that are being used come from concentrate, even if you want to bring the opinion of the Dat Torah to say that as long as there's no tam nirgash, that's only if there's juices being used. But if it's concentrate juices, that doesn't have the status of juice. It has the status of regular water. So it doesn't really make a difference. It goes back to the status of water, so it's going to have the status of bread. So you can't bring the svara to say that as long as there's no time nirgash. Even if you want to hold that that's the case, they're only using a part of that svara. They're not really going to the extent in which he's actually saying. He's only saying if it has the mei perot, but if it has the status of water because it's from concentrate, that was never even the intention of the Dat Torah. And the Dat Torah would himself say that the status of Mezonot bread would actually be like regular bread, and therefore a person would have to say the bracha of Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz. So therefore, there's really no kula to rely on this. That's the opinion of Harav Belsky. Of course, the discussion is much longer than this. It's about 12 or 13 pages, I believe. But after going through most of the points, those were the two main points I wanted to address as to how he knocks it off. The second that I want to bring is from Harav Moshe Sternbuch, Shlita. He brings in Sefer Tishov Hanhagot of Hachel Dal Siman Nun. And the title of the She'ela is Lachmania Hamugesh B'chatanot B'matosim Im B'chad Mezonot. It basically talks about Mezonot breads that are being brought in weddings and also on airplanes. And he goes through a discussion of whether there is even such a concept. He says, he says, I found and I was received a letter, which is a hechsher, which gives for certain types of rolls, which are mixed with fruit juices, which a person eats them through satisfaction. He eats a lot of them with other types of foods within a seudah. He says that the understanding is that the dat should be really a person should say the bracha hamotzi and bracha mazon. But he says that what's very interesting is that the hechsher that gives the hechsher for the Mezonot rolls, they actually come from edah cheladit. So it's the badas that gives them to them. And over there it says you should say the bracha of borei minei mezonot. So this obviously becomes a big problem because based on what we're seeing, there seems to be very little reason to give a hechsher for such a thing to say the bracha borei minei mezonot. But nonetheless, it's actually the edah charadit that's giving that. So how exactly is that possible? And of course, Harav Moshe Sternbuch himself is the president of the edah charadit. So what exactly is this being relied on? So he wants to say that really there's very little to rely on, but he wants to find the kaf zchut for this and to find some limud zchut to be able to show that maybe it could be, at least to one svara, it should be the bracha of borei minei mezonot. So he wants to say the following. He wants to say that maybe this is based on what the Gra himself holds. He says really that Pata Baba Kisnin is when a person will only say the bracha of Berkat Hamazon on this is only if he's going to be Kovea Seudah on this. Shikar Seudah Shalo, he Pata Baba Kisnin, that only when he's going to eat that in itself as his meal, that's when it's going to be that's the carve the meal. Musif od devarim lisva kalashil chazal kaval alav seudah. And he says specifically that the words of kavas alav seudah is the main words that the Gra wants to say, that when a person is kovea seudah on this, and that's going to be either his main principal part of the meal or that's his actual meal itself. that's when a person is going to be chayav to say the bracha of hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Aval ima kama chato eno mezonot mosiv lachamaniya shenikar tameh she'ena lechem kivan she'eno kovei alav suda merech borei min mezonot v'lo motzi berakat hamazon. So he says if a person is only eating that and it seems to be as part of a snack, therefore it's not really nikar. That person's eating it as lechem, and therefore a person has what to rely on to say that it's going to be borei min mezonot and not hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Hold on. So now you have a problem because when you eat on a plane and they give you a whole entire meal, this is not a snack. And the rule is that everything that you are, as you just said, anything that you kovea seudah, the din is like lechem, and not something that you bring like as a snack or something like this. So when you eat it, that's the whole thing. You're sitting down on a plane and they give you the whole tray, it becomes a problem. Or you're sitting down at home and you're eating a meal. You kovea seudah that. So therefore, even if it was pat haba b'kisnin, shemirchato mezonot, since my intent is to kovea seudah, because after all, I'm eating a meal, that would change the bracha regardless of the flavor or not the flavor. So even for that could be machmer.
So if we go 2 paragraphs down, where it says v'shamati
B'shara bibris, yes.
So he says from Harav Chaim Soloveitchik, he says the following: Gam ken savar shemavrachim berchat hamazon al mezonot rak shekviut seudah. So Rav Chaim basically held that the same thing as the Grot, and basically like most of the poskim that which we hold that when a person would say only the bracha of hamotzi lechem min haaretz is only when he has the mezonot with kviut seudah. Again, the question is, what exactly is kviut seudah? Is it based on subjective feeling? Is it based on a certain measurement? That's a different discussion. Then ikar seudah, and it has to be the ikar of the seudah. That's the principal thing that's being eaten. And a person should be machmir not to eat it alone because of the chashash of netilat yadayim and hamotzi. Okay. He said, if you want to have Mezonot bread, a person should make sure and be machmir that even the look of it, the shape of it, does not look like regular rolls. It has to be clearly something that's distinct from regular bread. And it's only being eaten for the taste of it and not for the actual principal meal. And he says halavai that should be done for the matos as well, because as the Rav said that whatever bread is being given on the planes themselves don't look distinct from bread. They look exactly like bread, and they barely have a taste that's distinct enough in order for a person to say a different bracha. So that's what he says, because the reality is on airplanes, they're so alike to regular bread that you really cannot make the difference. So even whatever limit zchut he's trying to find, that for those who want to give from the Eidah Chaladit a hechsher to say the bracha of Remin and Mezonot, he doesn't think that that's a sufficient reason. And he finds it very hard, and he struggles over here to find a real way to hear this thing. So again, this is only limut zchut, but if we're going to say the ikar of his reasoning, it seems to be against this. So to sum up, there's many shittot regarding exactly how we're supposed to go about this. I just brought several of them over here. There's a whole list of them. These are the ones I was able to find. Unfortunately, I was not able to scan them over here, which is why they're not part of the actual embedding of the thing. But anybody wants to check them out, I'll be able to take pictures of them and send it afterwards. So it says the following. So there's 3 categories over here. I placed the Rav in question, the position on saying Birkat of Mezonot for Mezonot bread, and the reasoning. So the first is from Harav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Alav Shalom. He is basically brought by Harav Bodner from his Halachos of Brachot, page 168. And Rav Auerbach basically said that his position on saying the bracha of Mezonot for Mezonot bread really depends on the situation. He agrees that if the concentrate is being used, it doesn't change the bracha at all. So he would agree to Rav Belsky that since we have the situation where the concentrate juice is being used as opposed to real fruit juice, and therefore there's no tam that's being felt, and even tam that's being felt, it really comes as from the majority of water that's being mixed with the little juice from concentrate, that's not really considered a significant difference. Therefore, he would hold that in that case, it for sure would be the bracha of hamotzi, and only when real fruit juice is being used, that's when a person would go say the bracha of mizonot. And of course, he would hold as well that small amount that need to be consumed to not be kovei suda, because if a kavut suda is being done, then a person would not really have any leniency to say that. But a person would have to say Then we find the Shita of Harav Moshe Sternbuch that we saw earlier that finds a limit schut for those who are mekel. Based on the Gra, he holds that maybe kfiyut suda really depends on what a person is eating it, whether it's ikar suda or not. But again, this is only limit schut, and he finds it very difficult to say so towards the end of his own response. Harav For Shlita in his laws of brachot concedes that it's better not to do so. Thinks that the limud of the Mishnah Berurah is the ikar that we saw earlier. That really doesn't depend whether it's going to be the majority, that with a taste or without the taste, but really any time that's going to be sufficient to make for a person to assume that that's going to be the bracha of Bread Mezonot. Rav Asher Weiss Shlita actually allows this in his Michat Asher Chelik Bet. He thinks it's generally eaten as a snack, and therefore it doesn't really make a difference how a person eats it, but rather a person would always say the bracha of Bread Mezonot, and he requires 21 beitzim for washing. Take a moment to think of that. He says if a person wants to wash, he doesn't say like generally kfiyut suda is like 3 or 4 kibeitzim. He says 21 kibeitzim is necessary for washing. That's a whole load of them. It's very shocking. That's the most mekel approach that I've been able to come in contact with. Even for those who say kfiyut suda is necessary, they say kfiyut suda is usually 4 kibeitzim. He acquires about 5.5 times more than that. It's very shocking.
If you eat 21 beitzim, I think you should see a nutritionist quickly.
It's I don't know exactly how that came about, but that's what he holds. Harav Shmuel Vazner Zatzal writes in Shevet Levi Chalchet. He says it really depends on the situation as well. Small amounts are fine, like Harav Orbach learned. It can lead to zilzul nitilat yadayim. He says that it could be leading to a problem nitilat yadayim later on, because let's say you have a situation. This is his own words. He says you have a situation where you have like a like a chatuna or something of the sort, like a bar mitzvah, in which, of course, the whole purpose of the bread being brought on the table is for the purpose of eating it with a meal. But now, if you're going to substitute regular bread with Mezonot bread, the only reason you're doing that is because you don't want to bench. And he says that's a zilzul of nitulat yadayim and zilzul of bekat mazon, and that is obviously the purpose is not for that. You shouldn't use this as a loophole to never say bekat mazon for that. So therefore, he was very iffy on the situation. Harav Belska Zatzal and Harav Shachter Shlita, based on but both of them are really they were the position of the OU. They hold against it, as we saw. The concentrated juice was not sufficient to add the sweet taste of the bread, but only in this situation we have the real juice, and it's going to be at least sufficient for it to be tasted for the Sephardim and 51% for the Ashkenazim. Only then would a person be able to say the bracha of Mezonot. And finally, Harav Abadi Shlita is against it as well. It says people clearly use this for the sake of a Su'udah, because, as the Rav said earlier, that in most situations the Mezonot bread is going to be used with Su'udah. Person puts cold cuts inside, or he uses it for any other filling inside. That itself is a clear idea that what's being shown. That's a raya that's going to be used for the kfiyut su'udah. Therefore, a person really has no reason to say the bracha of Mezonot, but rather a person should wash his hands. So based on this is just a brief list again. There's many more that speak onto this, but just as a brief listing, we find Harav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach is very iffy on the situation. He says sometimes yes, sometimes he's not. But clearly, based on concentrated juice, that's not a good enough reason. Rav Moshe Sternbuch finds a limud schut, but he's not really happy about the situation either. Rav Forst concedes it's not better to do so. Again, he's not for it. He finds a limud schut as well because he thinks the Mishnah Berurah is ikar, but he concedes it's better not to do so. Harav Vosner Zatzal depends on the situation. He might say that small amounts are fine, but really could lead to zilzul nitilat yadayim, in which case, if you have regular bread, that ends up being the case. Rav Belsky, Rav Shachter, Rav Abadi, all of them are against. So basically, you have 6 against. The only one that really finds it not to be a problem whatsoever is Harav Asher Weiss Shlita. Again, he's a gadol. There's no questioning that. But that's the case. You really have an overwhelming majority of the poskim of modern times saying that it becomes a tremendous issue to do so, and therefore, even if a person wants to do so, he should only eat the Mezonot bread when it's within a Su'udah. Again, even for those who hold that maybe it's not a problem, do believe that it should only be done in a situation where it's going to be eaten with a regular Su'udah, so he doesn't get into any issues. Other than that, if a person is going to be eating it with the Su'udah itself, there's really no assumption to assume that's a bracha of Borei Minim Mezonot, but rather a person should wash. And has Harav Belsky himself stated in the early tshuva that we saw earlier, that the idea of Mezonot rolls itself is an oxymoron, because if it's a roll, you're eating it with a meal. And if it's Mezonot, you're not eating with the meal. So to put the two of them together really makes absolutely no sense. And again, this is really the concession of most poskim, and that really seems to be the psak halacha at the end of the day. So again, I'd like to thank all of you for joining in and tuning into all this, and see you later. Bye-bye.